Hey everyone, Thursday, so we've got a new chocolate maker for you, and this one's from Canada. Today we're going to talk about SOMA chocolate maker. They are a Canadian bean to bar chocolate maker, and if not the first, one of the very, very early Canadian bean to bar chocolate makers. So SOMA chocolate maker is based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, which is, if you're looking at a map, straight up from Buffalo. I was born in Canada, just so you know. I live in the United States now, but I was born in Canada. It was started in 2003 by Castellan and Cynthia Leung. David is from a mining town in northern Ontario, Canada called Sudbury. His mother owned a bakery when he was growing up, and he used to go and help her with making donuts. So he has this in his background already. He went to a college in Toronto called George Brown College in the mid-80s. He graduated their baking techniques course, and he began working as a pastry chef in Toronto. Cynthia is from another smallish town in Toronto, Lindsay, Ontario. She has a Chinese background, and so her family didn't eat a lot of chocolate growing up. But she does have, her mom really liked to bake, so she's got that in her history as well. She went to school to be an architect, which you have to be crazy smart to be an architect. It's really hard stuff. And you have to be creative and you just have to have skills to be an architect. And she was working as an architect. David was working as a pastry chef in Toronto. Life was really busy, as it gets to be. Toronto is a very large city and it just gets busy. So they decided that they wanted to open a business together. And they were looking around and they found a place, but it wasn't big enough for a pastry shop. In 2001, David had traveled to a place called Richardson's Research, and he had taken a course on industrial chocolate making. So this was not a course for small batch bean to bar makers, two words that didn't even exist at this time. It was a course for people like coming from Mars and Hershey and those big ones that were making chocolate in huge amounts. So he took this course. He wanted to learn about panning, which is putting that sugar coat around the outside of something. So like think about the outside of an M&M or the outside of an Advil, where it's got that sugar coating around the outside. He wanted to learn about panning, but after he took this course, he decided that he was more interested in bean to bar. So that was in 2001. In 2003, they opened their first store in an old warehouse that used to be a whiskey distillery. It's the part of Toronto is called the Distillery District now. They started off in a teeny tiny, like the most worst space in the warehouse. It was next to the bathrooms, 400 square feet. That's where they started out. Eventually moved to a bigger space in the distillery. They have 3 locations in Toronto now. They have one in the Distillery District still. They have one in right downtown Toronto on King West. That one opened in 2010, and just this past year they finally opened their factory or their cacao lab. So I have not been there yet, and I am excited to see it next time I go to Toronto. So when they opened in 2003, there were not a lot of, the craft chocolate industry was not what it is today. They did not have a lot of contemporaries. There was basically Scharfenberger in the US, D'Amore and Amade in Italy, Mott Green in Granada making chocolate. So there wasn't the amount of transparency that there is out there now in how to make chocolate. there also wasn't the availability of small machines for smaller sizes or smaller batches. Everything was on industrial scale. So they had to do a lot of jury rigging of machines, like many of the first bean to bar makers. They purchased vintage machines because they were affordable. They used coffee roasters. They jury rigged a winnower. So they were part of that movement of figuring out how to do things on a small scale. When they tried to source their cacao beans, David tells this story about how when he tried to get a small amount of beans and he was calling these cacao brokers, there were only 11 companies in all of North America buying beans, and they were buying on huge scales and not like 3 bags that David wanted. And so they were like it took them a little time to figure out how to source the beans themselves. But they have worked hard. They work very hard at getting their flavors. Cynthia's involved in the flavors. If you follow them on Instagram, they're always exploring. Toronto is a very cosmopolitan. A lot of different cultures cultural food is available in the area, and they're always exploring different flavors. And I love that about their Instagram. I love that about their bars, that their exploration of flavors is just always happening. And so they do blends, they do single origin, they do inclusions. If you go to their store, they also have truffles and baked goods and all kinds of other things. They're very awesome to go to one of their stores. So I have a few bars. Oh, I should talk about the outside too. So all the beautiful artwork on the outside of their bars is done by Cynthia. They say it's a multi-sensorial experience where the artwork reflects the flavors. It sometimes reflects the place. So Porcelina is kind of a white bean, so I suspect that's why it's white in the core. But it's art, so you interpret, but it's always beautiful. So I love the art on all of their packaging. She does a great job on that. It's beautiful. And the flavors inside the bars are always interesting and unique as well. So I have a few bars from my last trip to their store in King West. I have this fun, if you haven't tried this one before, it's Milk Old School. I don't know if you can see on the camera, it's a very unique bar. It's basically, it's just 3 ingredients thrown into their mixer, melanger, and ground up. It's very gritty, very, old school. It's a unique tasting experience. So if you ever get your hands on one of those, I like to use this when I do presentations to talk about the process of cacao making, when it goes from bean into the melanger to the final product. This one it's kind of like a halfway before it really becomes all the way refined conch to that 21 and under microns for the mouthfeel. So this is a fun one. If you haven't had this, be sure to try this. I have their beautiful roasted white bar. This is a map of Toronto on the bar itself, so that's cool. I love how they've done that. That's Cynthia's artwork coming out again. I have a bar from Ecuador, and I also have their Porcelana, which is a multiple award winner. And this is the one that I'm going to open today because I'm excited to taste this bar once again. So let's open this one up and see what's inside. Okay, so here is our Porcelana bar. So if you don't know, Porcelana is a kind of Criollo cacao bean that is considered to be one of the best, if not, sometimes people call it the holy grail of cacao beans. Most cacao beans, when you cut them open, raw, are purpley color. Porcelana beans are white. So I feel like This picture on the outside is maybe a bean. I don't know. Could be, or a white bean in the middle. I don't know. But this Cynthia's art on the front is beautiful. It says 70% dark chocolate. It's won several awards. So we have 2015, 2016 gold, 2017 silver. They talk about how when they first started, they had read Marcel's book, A New Taste of Chocolate, and that's how they found out about these beans. And then they spent 11, 12 years trying to get a hold of these beans. It was not easy for them to get a hold of. So, okay, so they call it the Holy Grail on the back here. They're from Venezuela. So because of the political situation in Venezuela, sometimes they're hard to get. They do a gentle roast on it. Conching brings out the flavor as it does usually. Very round, very long. Let's not cheat and look at the tasting notes yet. So we have origin of Venezuela, 70% content. Here we have the ingredients, cacao nibs, cane sugar, and cocoa butter. So 3-ingredient bar they've added. The only thing they've added is cocoa butter and sugar. So let's open it up, take a look. Oh, love that, traveling without moving. Yes, that is what an exploration of flavors is all about, traveling without moving. Oh, okay, their mold is beautiful. Okay. So we'll take this out, and I hope you can see this. There we go. Okay, so they have such a pretty mold. Look at it's got the cacao pods on it here, the cacao flour. So pretty. This is one of those ones where you hate to break it up, but someone's got to do it. So let's take a look at this. It's a nice looking bar. It's got good temper, good snap. Did we hear the snap? A good snap. Let's give it a smell. So when I rub this with my thumb to warm up the cocoa butter and release the aromas, I get very nutty, a cocoa nutty, creamy scents, creamy aroma, very kind of nutty, maybe a little bit of berries. Let's taste it and see what we can taste. Okay, so I forgot to point this little detail out to you. Look right here. Let's see if I can get it on the camera. Boop! There's the maple leaf Canadian chocolate hiding amongst the cacao pods. All right, so when I ate this bar, it's a nice subtle bar, not bitter. I get notes of honey, nutty notes, maybe macadamia nuts, strong nutty notes, roasted flavor, maybe a tiny bit of strawberry in the middle. It has a long finish of cocoa, slightly bitter, and maybe even slightly spicy at the end. So it's a really subtle, really nice bar. It's got a nice long finish that's going to stay with you for a while, so you're not going to want to munch this bar down fast. You're going to want to savor this one for a long time. So that is the bar. Is there anything else that I wanted to tell you about this? Oh, I think I heard Cynthia or David, one of them, say that they make the bar 4 millimeters thick because it's the perfect tasting experience. It gives you the gives you the perfect melt in your mouth. So that's why their bars are that thickness. So they've put a lot of thought into how they make their chocolate and the flavors that they pull out of their chocolate. So let's flip the camera around and finish up. All right, so I want to tell you one more thing about SOMA. I want to talk about the name. So the name SOMA pops up in literature in a few places. So in an ancient Indian collection of a text, an ancient Sanskrit text. It's a collection of hymns and rituals and mystic interpretations called the Rig Veda. Soma appears in there as a delicious mythical substance, and later on it appears as a medicinal deity. It also shows up in the novel A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. In that novel, it's a substance, drug that the government dispenses to its people, which is supposed to take away all the bad feelings, to escape your pain and discomfort, embarrassment, sadness, anger, takes all those things away and replaces it with joy and arousal and just an overall well-being, feeling of well-being. So I thought that was really interesting. Chocolate does all of those things for me anyway. Soma, so if you ever get a chance to visit their stores in Toronto, be sure to do it. Order their chocolate if you can. They have so many unique explorations of flavor. Things like they have seasonal things like their Catvent calendar that they had last year, which was like a Advent chocolate calendar for grown-ups, which was amazing. They, if you follow them on Instagram, you've met their beautiful cats. They have things like Birch Branch, which was inspired by a branch that was found on, that Cynthia's dad found on their farm. It's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like truffle filled, looks like a birch branch. It's just, they're just always exploring shapes and flavors, and I just love how much how creative those two are together. What else do I have to say about Soma? I think that's it. So I'm a real big fan of Soma. I'm a fan of pastry chefs turned chocolate makers. I think they have this extra little education about combining flavors, willingness to explore flavors, and just open new ideas to chocolate. So that's Soma. Next week, I think we'll do a European chocolate maker. If you would like to get a video every week on Thursday, be sure to subscribe and like, and they'll come straight to you. Hope to see you then. Thanks.